I want you guys to see the theme here. The theme that Mike Johnson wants to then push is that this Congress is doing great things. It's historic. Listen to how much Mike Johnson sounds like Donald Trump.
We're going to deliver for the American people, as we have been doing. And I'll leave you with this thought. There's a split screen in America right now. There's a split screen. On one side of the screen, you have President Trump and the Republican majorities in the Congress, in the Senate, and the House doing the work for the American people. Look what we've achieved in the first 10 months of this year. You can make an argument that it's the most productive season for a new Congress and a new presidency, a new administration, at least in the modern era, maybe of all time.
Actually, you can't make that argument. Even though Mike Johnson says that you can make the argument, he just says it and says that you can make the argument. I wouldn't make that argument, especially since all these plots and plans that you have for healthcare that they keep saying that they've got. Look, let's see if something develops from that, since they're very productive in this Congress.
Companies, give me one thing that your supporters can look at and wait to happen as soon as the government reopens with healthcare.
More choice, more transparency, more competition. There's all kinds of ideas that have been developed over the last decade that you will start to see once we start moving forward. You cannot keep throwing money after a problem that you're not fixing. Republicans and Donald Trump are going to fix this problem.
So you're going to get that passed with the House, the Senate, and the White House in what time frame? Before the midterms, you would have to, obviously.
First things first, Martha, we got to open the government first. Once we get that open, we got to get this appropriations process done.
You see all those ideas he's got? More transparency, more competition. There's all kinds of ideas. Does that sound like a healthcare plan to you? Or does that sound like someone just throwing things out there? And then I guess, credit to Martha McCollum. She asked the most basic follow-up question: when? I mean, let's wait. Who knows? I mean, all I said was you're supposed to not ask me any details or specifics about the propaganda that I'm pushing your way. Instead, what you're supposed to focus in on, are you guys going to see the theme here? Not about their lack of plans or ideas, but about how they're very productive.
And I think that when we go into next year in the midterms, we're very bullish about the outcome. We have an extraordinary record to run on. You mentioned, Leader Scalise mentioned sort of what we call the split screen here. And I'll remind you all again, under President Trump and Republicans, we have had an extraordinary run. The first 9 months of this, 9 months, the 10th month has been shut down because of the Democrats. The first 9 months of this Congress and this administration, arguably the most productive of all time. We cut taxes, cut regulations, cut waste, fraud, and abuse in government.
I think he wants you guys to think that this is the most productive Congress of all time because, they cut fraud, waste, and abuse. So let's transition back one more time. Let's see if there's any more ideas from people like Ron Johnson, since this is the most productive Congress of all time ever in history, according to Mike Johnson.
Republicans don't have a plan to give unified people.
I realize Democrats are doing everything they can to blame Republicans for their failed health care system. And they're the ones that remade our health care system. They're the ones who put in Obamacare that's causing premiums to skyrocket. Okay? So, again, we're happy to work with them if they first admit the problem. That's the first step in solving a problem. You got to admit you have it.
Did you hear any ideas there? Or did you hear them say, we're going to wait one more time? You have to admit that you have a problem first. If you've given no answers, the only answer they keep giving is that, this is the most productive Congress in history. I'm going to give Ron Johnson one more chance.
Let's bring free market competition back into the healthcare industry. Let's bring back, way more consumer choice. Rick Scott, an expert in healthcare, right? He's working with people like myself, leadership, the White House. Let's design the Republican plan. We completely blew it with the repeal and replace. I never liked that term. I always said, let's repair the damage done, transition to a system that works. Health savings accounts.
Have you seen them given a way that this could work? You're supposed to save some money and put it in some kind of other account, and then you get healthcare magically. My favorite thing that Ron Johnson said there, I feel like maybe you guys heard him say it too. He needs to do things like what Rick Scott, who's an expert in healthcare. Rick Scott is an expert on healthcare. We should start following Rick Scott. There was other folks that were following Rick Scott. The only problem is they were investigators and they busted his ass.
It is one of the biggest criminal investigations of an American corporation ever.
We're executing a search warrant.
In the past few months, hundreds of federal agents have raided at least 70 of Columbia's hospitals and offices in 7 states.
Rick Scott promised explosive growth to shareholders, but to insiders, Rick Scott could be ruthless.
They seem to care more about profits than medicine.
Good old-fashioned fraud, lying for money.
Over the last decade, Columbia has made its stockholders and executives rich.
The company cheated the Medicare program, and they knew what they were doing.
Regularly filing false Medicare reports and overcharging the government.
Charging the government for everything from Kentucky Derby tickets to country club memberships.
False claims submitted to the government year after year over the course of hundreds of hospitals. Their promotions depended on it. Their bonuses depended on it.
For-profit hospital chain HCA, formerly called Columbia HCA, will plead guilty to criminal conduct.
$745 million to settle charges of fraud in Medicare billing.
Rick Scott and 5 other top corporate executives have resigned, and federal investigators told ABC News today that Scott is now considered a prime target of the investigation.
The biggest Medicare healthcare fraud in U.S. history. And Ron Johnson is going to put his face in front of cameras and tell you that you should trust the guy who was one of the architects of doing that, who was busted for it. This guy is back in elected office after doing criminal activity where he's proven to have done exactly what it is that they said he's an expert on. If somebody's a thief and stole 5 cars, he's a carjacker. Would you trust him with your car? But because he's an old, weird-looking, crypt-keeping white guy, we're supposed to trust him with our healthcare system when he doesn't even have a plan. But Ron Johnson is going to vouch for him because Ron Johnson is an honest guy, too. Let's keep exposing all of the very obviously unprincipled things that this party's about, but let's take that next step. I always want the next step to be taken. We've exposed them for the huge liars they are. We've exposed them for the criminals they are. As a 34-time felon in the White House, Rick Scott was a part of the biggest Medicare fraud in history of this country. But for some reason, when someone says, yo, let's listen to Rick Scott, we don't laugh at them the way that we would laugh at them if they said, let's give this car thief our keys. We got to start laughing at them and making them uncomfortable with them expecting us to buy their lies. Kind of like how these hosts did with Mike Johnson. Here's his same lie, and here's the best way to respond to it.
One word to describe this Congress.
Productive. No, listen, hey, can you argue it? The first 7 months, most productive of any Congress, I think. Certainly in the modern era. Take me back to any other era.
I would say, that's probably longer than we have today.
Just laugh at him, bro. He's uncomfortable when people don't take his lies seriously in real time. Just laugh at him. Like, it's a natural response because if anyone's been paying any attention, they'd realize that doesn't make any sense. That's a talking point. Let's bring in this nerd, Harry Enton, over on CNN.
I mean, look, this has been a historically unproductive Congress so far. I mean, it's basically bizarro land compared to where we were during the first Trump administration. So laws signed by a president since 1953 at this point of presidency. Look, the fewest on record through this point, there have only been 5. Get it? 5 laws actually passed by this Congress and then signed into law by the president. Compare that to 2017 when you actually had 35 by this point, which was the most on record. So it's not much of a surprise that this Congress is struggling to actually pass legislation, because the fact is that has been the rule of the game so far, where they just really haven't been able to pass anything. And the fact that they'll actually be able to pass something, well, it's a minor miracle by some accords. Well, if you can't pass a law, why don't you just sign an executive order? That's what Donald Trump's been doing. So Trump executive orders at this point. In 2017, it was just 36. Look at the number now. Holy Toledo, 152. That is the most on record for any president at this point in a presidency, dating back since at least the FDR administration. Indeed, if you had this 152 and Donald Trump didn't sign a single other one, that itself for the entire year would be the most since FDR.
The most productive Congress ever. And if not the modern era, then forever, says Mike Johnson. Maybe it's the executive orders that he thinks is a productive Congress, especially since he follows behind Donald Trump's ass and kisses it every moment. And that's what he thinks production is. Let me kiss Donald Trump's ass and allow him to do anything he wants. Then we'll call this Congress a success. The reason he calls it a success is because they passed that bill that helped more rich folks and destroyed more regular and poor folks' lives in the process. That's productive work for this MAGA Republican Party. Don't forget that part.